Hey guys, welcome back to Mental Health Matters, where we aim to normalize talking about everything mental health-wise. So today I want to dive right into a topic, and I want to start with panic attacks. I think that panic attacks have become somewhat like normal in a sense that people say they're having a panic attack. And I'm not here to say that these people aren't experiencing panic attacks. People experience panic attacks in different ways. But I feel like some of the people that are having these panic attacks, it's kind of like a cool thing now. Or because they're like breathing heavy, they're having a panic attack. Or, someone yelled at them, that's a panic attack. So what is a panic attack? According to the National Institute of Mental Health, panic attacks are characterized by a fear of disaster or of losing control, even when there is no real danger. A person may also have a strong physical reaction during a panic attack. It may feel like having a heart attack. Panic attacks can occur at any time, and many people with panic disorder worry about and dread the possibility of another attack. Panic attacks usually do have a lot of physical symptoms, and they're pretty common, which is why I think it's become like a norm. So some symptoms are like pounding or racing heart, sweating, chills, trembling, breathing problems, weakness or dizziness, tingly or numb hands, chest pain, stomach pain, and nausea. And I think that's like what most people think of when they think of having a panic attack. But along with physical symptoms, there are also mental symptoms, like a feeling of being out of control or a fear of death or impending doom, an intense worry about when the next panic attack will happen, and a fear or avoidance of places where panic attacks have occurred in the past, which could evolve into something called agoraphobia. And not all panic attacks are noticeable. In fact, my therapist told me that most of us feel like everyone knows we're panicking, but most of the times we're having these attacks in silence and nobody can really tell, unless you spoke out. It could also mean that you're not having as severe of a panic attack, or like in my case, you've just learned to handle them, or you've gotten used to them, or maybe medication is helping to dull them and make them perhaps not as noticeable. So panic attacks are obviously terrifying. And if you've never had one and then you suddenly do, you might end up in the ER like I did in October of 2020, but that's a video for a different day. The scariest part of panic attacks is the fear of another panic attack. It literally consumes your life. That's why I want to tell you about my very first panic attack today. So when I was 16, I was a sophomore in high school, and I don't remember being particularly stressed or, anything out of the ordinary when I had this first panic attack, but I do remember it very, very vividly. So I was in art class. I don't remember what time of day, probably in the morning, and I was fine. I was sitting in the front of the classroom, right up in the front on the left, and the door was right here. And then, nothing was going on, and I just started feeling really hot, and I felt like the room was closing in on me. It felt like what I could only imagine passing out might feel like. I had never passed out at that point. I still haven't passed out. I was feeling like I couldn't see. I was dizzy, and I felt maybe I was having some trouble breathing, and it felt like it was going on and on and on, and I couldn't focus on anything else, couldn't hear anything, and then I just felt this whoosh, and then I was shaking, and I thought, well, maybe I have low sugar. So what I did was I decided to grab a hall pass and go down the hall to the bathroom. And I just chilled in the stall for a minute, calmed down, tried to figure out what's going on. It went away. And I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to go back to class. I stood up, washed my hands, I'm good. And I left the bathroom. And I remember passing this girl, and I looked at her, and then all of a sudden I just felt this huge wave of nausea, and I just remember going clutching my stomach and running back to the bathroom, and I remember her just giving me a weird look, what's wrong with her? She didn't come and check on me in the bathroom, but I ran back in there, and I never threw up, but this kind of symptoms, at this point I was okay, maybe I'm coming down with a flu or something. I think it was maybe in the spring. So I did call my grandma, and I had her pick me up. Once I got home, I was fine and didn't experience anything else. I didn't feel sick or anything once I got home. So, I was like, I don't know what this is. So I decided to stay home for another day just because I was like, I don't want to feel like that again. But I went to school the following day, and I don't remember like as vividly as I do about the first time, but I think something similar might have happened because I did end up going home again. So, at home I felt fine, and I just was like, okay, this will pass, I'll be fine. So I wasn't freaked out really, and at this time, I really just thought I was sick. So there was no me Googling these symptoms. I just thought I was sick. And that's it. There wasn't, me freaking out why am I nauseous and feeling dizzy and all this stuff. So I did go back to school the next day, and I think the main reason I went back is because I was in choir and we were going to festival that day. And if you're in band or you were in band or you were a choir kid, you know exactly what festival is. And I just had a really bad feeling when we were going, and I kept thinking, what if I start feeling like that again? What if I feel like that when I'm on stage? And that's all I could keep thinking about. And then I remember while we were practicing for festival and stuff, that the teachers would say hey, just remember don't lock your knees when you're up on stage, under the hot lights and everything, because you could pass out. And I kept thinking about that, and then I was like, oh, I don't want to pass out, and I don't, then this became this whole thing of I just had this huge fear of passing out. And so I just kept thinking about it. And then when we got on stage and we started singing, I remember whispering to the people next to me. I was like, I think I'm gonna pass out. And they were like, shh, stop. And it was just the same awful feeling again. And I was just trying to look normal because I felt I was just freaking out. So it went away, and we went and sat down, and I felt fine for the rest of the day. And I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell my family. I was just I'm still sick. I'm just still recovering. It's fine. But I think every day, or pretty much every day after that, I continued to have panic attacks. And I can't remember them really at this point, but and because they were happening so often, I just kind of got used to that feeling, and some of the symptoms went away, the nausea and stuff like that, but that feeling of passing out or suddenly feeling I can't see was very, very common theme, and the panic attacks got shorter, and so I figured I was fine. I still didn't tell anyone, and I think that was around the time maybe I started looking things up online myself. And I remember at first I didn't find anything about panic attacks. I figured out that I was an introvert. And I was like, okay, that's weird. I've never heard that, but it makes sense. No one has ever talked about something like this. And I don't remember when I found the stuff about panic attacks, and I didn't share it with anyone, but I was yeah, I think I'm having panic attacks. But it's fine. And I didn't want to share it with anyone because nobody I knew and no one in my family had ever said anything panic attacks or anxiety attacks or anything like that. So I had no idea what they were, and I was okay, no one's talking about it, so it's weird, and I don't want to be weird. So I continued having these panic attacks, and they were getting better in the sense that it was just I knew it was going to happen. Every day I was just prepared, yeah, I'm going to have a panic attack today. And it's just something I'm going to deal with. And around this time, I was also starting to develop depression. But again, that's something I did not figure out for a few more years until I was in college. I just knew that I didn't want to go to school anymore because now I was associating school with the awful panic attacks. And I would literally wake up in the morning and just cry and try and figure out a way to not go to school because I just did not want to feel like that anymore. I was afraid I was going to pass out, and it was just becoming a obsessive thought, and it wasn't just at school anymore. It was now coming with me to dance. So I was a competitive dancer for 15 years. And, before you go on stage and compete, like, there's that adrenaline and, like, a little bit of nerves. Like, you always have that before you go on stage. But now I was constantly thinking, what if I go on stage and I have a panic attack? What if I go on stage and I have a panic attack and I pass out while I'm dancing? Like, what if that happens? And so I'm not only, like, worried about going on stage and trying to remember my dance and, keep that, but I'm thinking I'm going to go on stage and I'm going to pass out and, all of this. I never did pass out on stage. Once you're on stage and all of that's happening, like, you're not thinking about that. But, like, I constantly was thinking about that, and it was horrible because I loved dance and I loved competing, and, like, it was just, like, hindering everything. So I dealt with panic attacks, and I still deal with panic attacks, but I was, like, having them, constantly until I was, like, a freshman in college, and, they got under control, per se. Like, I know that they didn't happen as often, but in, like, certain classes, like, I always knew, like, yeah, I'm gonna have a panic attack. Like, toward the end of my freshman year, like, I was having, like, a lot of depression issues and, like, other kind of, like, things. And I decided, like, hey, like, I'm not dealing with only panic attacks now, but, like, I'm having, like, depression and, like, not so cool thoughts. And, like, so I went to my primary care doctor, and she was like, yeah, it sounds like, you might want to go on some medicine. I was like, yeah. So I got prescribed Zoloft. So, that's my story on my first panic attack and how it evolved and how long I carried, that burden. And, if I had just, like, reached out to someone back then and, had the resources to know other people were having these kind of things, I think things would have not spiraled out of control like they did my senior year. Again, another story for another time. Panic attacks and anxiety, people know about them now. It's common now, but when I was growing up, like I said, people weren't talking about it, or at least people I knew weren't talking about it, and I didn't even, like, know what panic attacks were, or depression, or any of that stuff until, like, I did some research. So people today have a lot more resources and a lot more support because so many people are dealing with it, and that's not a good thing by any means, but there are a lot more resources available to people earlier on so that these things, don't get worse and worse and worse and worse, and then it's, developing extra, things on top of it, like for me. So I think I've rambled on about panic attacks, for long enough, and I just want you to know that, like, if you're having panic attacks and you don't know what to do, and you feel like you have no one you can turn to, like, send me a message. Tell your family, tell your friends, and, find some support. There's, like, a million different, like, things you can do, like, online therapy, all this stuff. I really regret, like, not getting the help earlier. So I really hope that if you're going through this, that you can go and get that help right now to help you. In a future video, I don't know, like, how soon, I'm going to talk about some things that have really helped me cope with my panic attacks. I think for probably a month or so, I have been able to really control my panic attacks, and I haven't really had too many. And that's because through my therapy, I've learned a lot of different techniques that have really helped me, and I really want to share those with you guys so that if you're suffering, you don't have to anymore. So if you have any panic attack coping mechanisms, please share them with us in the comments, because there are so many different ways to deal with panic attacks, and no one person like deals with it the same way, and one technique might work for one person and one might not. So if you have any, share them in the comments and help people gain control over their panic. Also, if you feel like you need some extra support, feel free to join our Discord. I put a link in the description, and you can also find it under my bio here on YouTube. It's a really chill place. I'm really trying to build it up and make it a really cool, safe place where we can all like talk about mental health and support each other, but also just relax and listen to music and meditate and share memes and share coping stuff, so all that good stuff. So check that out if that sounds interesting to you. I hope that you have a really great day, and remember that mental health matters, and so do you. Bye.